Hello, welcome to a new special live that Kat and I are doing together of Relatively Damaged Live. My name's Angela, and as you know, this is Kat.
Yes.
Usually we stream our shows live on Mondays to Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube. I don't know, somewhere else too, probably. But today's different. And we really felt like we needed to talk about this today. So here we are. How hasn't there been enough suffering is our topic question of the day. And I'm going to let Kat lead us into this one.
I'm going to start out with a quote that's most commonly attributed to Edmund Burke, and it's a very famous quote. I'm sure we've all heard it. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And when I heard the news 2 days ago about another school shooting of innocent children in Uvalde, Texas, I was angry, I was sad, I was in tears, and I said, enough. How much more do we have to do in order to solve this problem? Other countries have had mass shootings in schools. When they have had mass shootings in schools, they have responded. And since then, they have had zero shootings in the schools. And it's a uniquely American problem, the idea of guns and where they come from. Now, Angela, I'm going to assume you were similar to me. That wasn't an issue when we were in school.
No, I think we were hiding under desks for fear of bombing.
Yes, or tornadoes. We had that. And but overall, we felt the school was a safe place. If there was going to be a tornado, it was a natural disaster. We had to know what to do to survive. It happens, whether, whatever. You guys out in California have fires. You have to know what to do to survive if there is that danger. We cannot control it at all. Bombing, was a thing. We had to trust our government that they wouldn't do it, but it was something so huge, so out of control that it didn't matter where you were done. A school shooting is different. I remember not being afraid. If I had to go to the washroom, yeah, I had a hall pass from the teacher, but I wasn't in a locked room where I couldn't go out and use the washroom. There were kids in the halls in high school. You went from one class to another. There were always people moving around. And why is this a problem? Why do our children have to live with this fear? Why do parents have to mourn the senseless deaths of 10-year-old children? And I'm tired. I've sat on the sidelines. I've done that. I worked at the university, and after mass shootings at universities, we had drills. We had active shooter drills. We had to identify the escapes. We had to have teams and to help the other students get out of the building. Since I worked in one of the busiest buildings on campus, and I don't want to minimize the loss of college students either, or staff, because any senseless gun violence is exactly that, senseless. Any loss of life from that is senseless. It's like, why? And so my question is that I want to ask people to consider is, where is the money coming from? Why are politicians, even though over 70%, in some cases upwards of 90% of Americans want common sense gun laws. Nobody is coming for guns. We want laws to protect people. We want laws so that, like this very disturbed young man, which his mother admitted to the media was an issue for her. Why was he allowed 6 days after his 18th birthday to buy military grade weapons and body armor? What was the point of it?
Well, I think for me, my question might go differently. I think that maybe the is, how are we creating this pain and suffering, and maybe we're not creating it. What are we doing as a country to address it? Because we had one person suffering, and that person suffering couldn't get or find the help they needed. And now we have 19, I think, families. I don't know a lot about the event, and I just want to be very clear with the audience about that. I have not been watching everything on this. It's very painful, and so I am glad that we are talking about that in an environment where I think that Kat and I can respect. I respect that she watches. She has a tremendous amount of knowledge on this incident, and I feel like I have limited amount of knowledge on the incident. I want to know there's got to be a way we can do this better, right? I don't know, because my concern is from like the political perspective that now we're looking at power and control. If we can just control these people enough, then they won't hurt other people. And my experience has been that the government can put those rules into place and people are still going to get injured. Maybe not to the same extent, or maybe just differently. So I want to be really careful in how much power that we give away from teaching people how to really cope and deal with the conflict within themselves, so they're not spewing it out on everyone else.
And Angela, I can't agree with you more on that. We have so many issues in our society about that, where we live in this land of memes and tropes that everybody just spews out, and it's all about owning somebody else. Ha ha, I own you. Instead of looking and creating common sense solutions. I'm looking at the immediate solution. The immediate solution is a problem of military style weapons in this country. If people didn't have access to that, anybody who is disturbed could go and stab someone on a train in New York, which just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that that's okay. That was one person that got killed, though. We had another one in Chicago. In senseless violence in Chicago is just out of control here. And
so I wonder,
this issue of mass shootings. I mean, here
mm-hmm.
it is that I can kill one person with a knife. I can kill one, maybe two, a couple people with a handgun. Not that I'm going to.
Right, but I think your thought process is
that here, if I have an AR-15 in a matter of seconds, I can kill multiple people.
Yeah, so someone with a knife or even a Glock or something like that would be stopped in a matter of could be stopped faster than someone with a military style gun, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And that's what I mean about common sense gun control. Red flag laws.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
When somebody they've been kind of tagged,
Mm-hmm.
as having had a mental illness, having had a criminal background check, or no criminal background check. You can go into I can go into Texas and get a gun.
Gosh, even
Easy
though with the
peasy.
mental illness, I mean, anyone who's ever had depression or suffered with something like that could end up on a red flag list. And what if they're just getting they've done their best to recover, or they've done everything they could, and now
Well,
they can't.
here's why and again, I don't know all of the details
Yeah.
about that, but there has to be something that we can do. We scour social media. I mean, and this is not related, but we had some gun violence in Chicago because on social media somebody spread out the word to go downtown.
Mm.
And so there was huge crowds of people, and when there are huge crowds of people, inevitably in Chicago, violence seems to erupt.
Yeah, I think that probably that most of that comes from the sociopath that or the psychopath that eggs on the sociopath. Um, and that's those types of people. But and there is and let's talk about that just real briefly, because if we've got those people that don't that struggle with psychopathy and things like that, um, they don't have any empathy. And I think we've got, I mean, I think the statistics, the last I checked, is like 1 in 100. And depending on if you work in corporate America, that changes. But we're always going to have those people out there willing to egg people on. So do we have conversations with our kids about how to deal with it? How do we manage that?
Well, that's the thing. This is a complex problem. It's not solved by one thing. Okay,
Yeah.
banning assault rifles would be one step, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't address the root cause.
Right.
What is the root cause here? So people want to throw more money at the police, and I'm not against funding the police at all. But overwhelmingly, many of these kinds of incidents are by disturbed people who need mental health services
Right. And how
and
do we
intervention before it gets to that point.
yeah, and I'm just wondering, like, because sometimes you might have a feeling that someone is having trouble, right? But they don't come out and say it. So how do we make sure, how do we set up a safe environment for reporting that? How do we because then it could turn into a huge mess even when it's not meant to. Um, just by nature of who's involved, and then you get into the types of people that report someone just because they can, talking about laws, right? Like, what about the Texas abortion law right now? Someone could just say, oh, so and so did that, and now somebody's in court having to defend themselves, even if
Right.
whether they did it or not.
Well, and here, here's another person. It just it makes me wonder, and again, and this is why I'm saying follow the money. Where's the money coming from? If you look at the history of the NRA and how things changed in there, they were founded to promote a sport, not to become advocate for gun rights. It was about responsible use of sporting guns, and this has changed. Actually, early on in the history, I believe it was one of the presidents. I'd have to look up the exact facts. So if somebody's fact checking me, please know that I'm not sure on the dates, but I'd be happy to provide them for anybody. Is that one of the presidents got ousted because he accepted money from gun manufacturers.
Mm.
So the focus of the NRA changed when gun manufacturers were funneling money to the organization. So it's all, and then the NRA funds politicians, which is why you have politicians. Nobody's going to take away my guns.
Well, and see, we get into, I think, from my perspective, even a deeper seated issue when we start talking about like politicians, and recognizing that they're not crossing party lines. There is no, my experience anyway, or my feeling is that we're not admitting when we're wrong. We're not going, recognizing when someone has a better idea. It's really nice when you can go to a meeting, or like, in my family, or other places, and we can have a conversation about what we think will work and what doesn't work, and then know that we can come back to it. My concern with the power and control with the government is, a lot of times once we vote something in or they sign something in, I know signing in, we hear a lot more about things going back, or the politicians working really hard to overturn things like that. But once it's voted in, it is not very often things are overturned. I.e., Roe versus Wade is one of the first things I'm hearing of. That I don't know. I'm not a
But
historian.
that wasn't voted in. That was
Well, that
asserted
was
as
that's
a
right.
right by the Supreme Court.
And now it's
And
changing.
and
Maybe.
and
Oof.
and here, here the thing is that this is why I said at the beginning, towards the beginning, follow the money. Because as much as we believe that we are one vote, one person, we are not.
No.
It is about money, and money influences.
Yeah. Well,
And
I mean, yeah, because implicit bias.
right. And so what's happening is focus is being put rather than on substantive policy issues, a real thing. It's about things that are these hot button issues that people feel strongly about. And so you're going to support that candidate. Oh, they're coming for your guns. Oh, it's this is where the problem is. Greg Abbott was comparing the gun violence in Texas, to the gun violence in Chicago, and saying less students have died in schools than people have died in Chicago. And first of all,
I'm
that's
sorry,
comparing
but last I
apples
checked,
and
a human
oranges.
life is a human life.
Well, that's it exactly. And the thing is that they went on TV and were saying we did this, we did this, we did this. Yeah, and it failed. It didn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't work. I am not saying that we shouldn't be aware of those things and we shouldn't be doing those things, but we have to do more. If what we are doing now is not working, we have to change the things that we do, and look at it. Where are your politicians getting their money from? Who are they voting for? They're not voting for your interest and my interest. They're voting for the interest of the people who pay them.
Right. I'm taking it to the family. I'm taking it back to the family though, because I think that with the breakdown in the family, that it is much harder, for children to learn even emotional intelligence and things like that. And I think that, at this point, my concern is that we're putting the onus of teaching things like that in some cases on schools, and they don't. I don't think they have the time. I think they're doing their best, um, but I'm here's where I get stuck, right? Because do I want gun violence? No. Do I want freedom? Yes. But what is freedom? What happens with freedom, and what is freedom? And how do I know when I'm free? Because as soon as government, judges, et cetera, have to step in, then are we free? Or are we just putting more rules down? And once I put a rule down, then I'm right and you're wrong. And then I have more of a sense of that I can, well, you're wrong and I get to prove it. Do you see where I'm
Here's
going with this? Like, just,
I do in a sense, but I want to stop here for a second, because I think people have a wrong idea of freedom. Freedom to many people, and I'm going to use a profanity, thinks that they can do whatever the fuck they want.
okay.
Okay. And the problem with that idea is that there is no responsibility inherent in that. With freedom comes responsibility.
Agreed.
And so if I consider myself a sane person. I have made a choice not to have a gun. I have considered it. I'll be honest, I have considered it. I'm not anti-gun, but I have made a choice for me at this point in my life that it is not in my best interest to have a gun. Now I know myself, if I had a gun, I realize that is a responsibility. And I would have responsibility to make sure that gun was secure, to make sure that it was cleaned properly, to make sure that I know how to use it, just like I do my car. Because if I don't maintain my car and I don't have working brakes, I could kill someone. If I don't take the responsibility to be a safe driver, I
Right.
could kill someone.
Yeah. And that's basically a 3 ton, at least a 3 ton bomb.
Exactly.
I mean, I
So
don't I just really wanted to point to that because a car can be used as a weapon and sometimes is.
right. I mean, and that's the thing is if anybody has intention to kill someone, they will find a way to do it. Why are we making it so easy?
Okay, so your biggest concern is that it's too easy.
That is one of my concerns. Is that what position? What can I use my voice for? What can I use this platform we have here
Yeah.
to be able to implore people to think? I would like to point out, I have some facts here. So this is from Dr. Brian Levia, MD. He's a pediatrician. I want people to know that death by firearm is not rare in kids. In fact, it has been the number one cause of death in this age group since 2020. In 2020 alone, 4,300 children have died from firearms. That's equivalent to one Boeing 747 plane crash every month for 9 months.
Mm,
And so I'm saying that, and we hear, Chicago is held up as a this violent city, call it Chirac and all that kind of stuff. People are being clever. But yeah, it's every day I'm hearing of another shooting, and oftentimes it's a kid. I mean, my heart has broken when I have heard of a child sleeping on their sofa in their living room, and a stray bullet goes in there and kills the kid. That is just as painful as this.
yeah.
Why? And then they're saying, well, gun laws don't work in Chicago, and it's a first of all, it's a stupid answer because you're not looking at all the causes
Yeah,
of
and
why guns are in Chicago. And I don't
yeah.
necessarily want to go into that. Um,
No. I'm
but
just
it's a problem, and it's an epidemic. And if you're saying you're not going to take care of my guns, and you're holding your AR-15, and you're teaching your children to hold their AR-15s, grooming them, in my opinion, um, it just continues this culture of guns. You know,
yeah.
and I know I'm going to get the quote wrong from the Bible. You know, change our swords into plowshares.
Yeah, so how do I think that is where I'm going in my mind. How do we do that? How do we teach? What do we change so that, maybe it's if I have time to go volunteer at a school and sit with some kids, I'm sitting with some kids. So, for instance, out here in the area I live in, it's open enrollment. So what happens is everybody looks at the ratings of the school, and then the a lot of times it's the non-working parents that are able to adjust, or they maybe they get paid a higher wage, or they're able to work part-time, and so they move all of their kids. These are the parents with the more time and the more ability to have conversations, and they move their kids to the other school with the higher rating. And why do they do that? Because they want the child to be successful. That's great. But, and I don't use but often, but what happens to all the kids at the lower rated school? Those parents absolutely don't have time to come in and help. They do their best. And then those kids, where they could have created that bond with a parent, and that parent could have made a difference not only in their child's life, but in all these other kids' lives. Now these other kids are left to suffer. And I think it's usually these kids that are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that are constantly living in a state of fear, their safety, their security, their connection, those really super basic needs aren't being met, and then they're desperate. And what happens when we become desperate, right? We start making bad decisions. All of us do. We can't they can't see any other way out. Because in their mind, they only can see in the tunnel. I'm just speaking very generally. And so that's where I'm at. Instead of putting people down, so while I may agree on some level about the automatic rifles, I don't understand that, but why we would need those anyway. But on the deeper level, let's stop putting down people in lower socioeconomic situations, and let's lift up. Let's lift them up. Let's support them. Let's
Well,
love them.
exactly. And oftentimes, more often than not, those happen to be black and brown people.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a
Not
family
exclusively.
that with a single parent who worked all the time, on aid. We were while she put herself through school. I mean, it was very hard, and I don't, beyond a few people on the street that I lived on, right? We didn't really feel supported. There was not a big group of people around us that were, the schools, I don't know how much they were supportive, or if they pointed us to places. But I think even, I know like nowadays, you can get more mental health support, but how do we support these parents that are on the verge of being homeless, that also have children? And I don't think the answer is to take away the children. I just want to be very clear about that, because these are amazing people.
Right. I, you know, and that goes, I think, I think we agree, basically. I am just incredulous about the whole guns, the whole assault rifles, the whole way that this played out, and and just the availability of guns, um, like this, of mass destruction. Okay, these guns are not for personal protection. They're not for sport. They're not for hunting, which are all valid reasons for people to have guns.
Mm.
There's that, and then there are, as you're saying, these larger societal issues that need to be addressed. Um, and I mean, we can go into that, the ever widening um, income gap between rich and poor. And again, it's coming down to the money. The people who have the money, the people who have the power, are doing everything they can to consolidate their power and consolidate their money and have more and more and more. So the haves have incredibly a lot more money than the have-nots. And
Mm.
so the have-nots are suffering. So, when I grew up, um, my mom stayed at home. She was able to do that. I was very fortunate. I had privilege to live in a two-parent family where my father could go out and work and earn enough money, and my mom was able to stay home with us, especially when we were younger, and able to do that. Nowadays, you get have families where both parents are working, sometimes multiple jobs if there are two parents, or single parents having to work. So yes, there is not the time and the effort that they put in. There are only so many hours in a day, and people, I believe the majority of people are doing their very best. And I think what and that goes to a much bigger issue about things that we can do. The thing here is that I hope this spark today in people is that we can start having these conversations, because the problems are not as simple as giving more money to the police or taking away the guns. Those are parts of the issue. And there are much bigger issues at here. And we have to look at where we are, and we have to talk to each other. And we have to say, these are not simple issues that can be addressed in a meme or a trope and put on social media for the sake of getting likes. These are difficult conversations that we need to have. These are difficult situations that we need to insist our politicians, and it doesn't matter if you are Republican or Democrat or independent or libertarian, whatever. You need to have these conversations with your politicians. You need to know where they stand and where they get their money from and who they are taking their orders from. Because as far as I'm concerned, the way it's supposed to work is there should be listening to me as a constituent. Whether they're not, they are of the party that I vote,
Mm-hmm.
they should be listening and they should have answers. And if they don't have the answers, that's okay. But then find the answer and come back
Yeah. Well, and
and
then
and and,
even,
and talk talk to each other. Stop this gridlock. Stop living in 140 character sound bites, for heaven's sakes.
yeah, I think I
Enough.
agree. Talk to each other. Talk about it. And
Complex
I think,
problems require complex solutions.
yeah, and I think also being willing to come back to the table if it does not appear to be working, and not making the first solution wrong. I think that a lot of that happens in today's world. It I don't think it was wrong. I think we learned that it didn't work. But the last I checked, in order to succeed, we've got to fail. I
Yeah.
don't think, I mean, even when we learn to walk, we fail.
And I know we're way over time. I don't know, more longer than we usually go, but I think we agree. And those of you who have seen our show know that we always try to come from this loving place. We always try to come from this healing place. That's what we're about here. Relatively damaged. We are all relatively damaged in some way. We all have had suffering. And hasn't there been enough suffering? Be it these parents who are suffering from the loss of their children, be it people suffering from poverty or addiction or mental illness or physical illness, whatever. It's enough. So I have a quote from Bo Taplin, if I can close with this.
Please.
Remember, love is both a noun and a verb, not only a feeling, but also an action. It's not enough to simply hold love in your heart. You must also give it fire and voice. And that's what I'm doing here today. I'm
So
giving it my
beautiful.
fire, I'm giving it my voice and my tears.
And your tears and your big heart. And I'm here too. Um, not, yeah, I'm here too. I'm with you in this. It is a struggle. I'm with the parent suffering. I'm, if we can all look to what we can do, maybe it's just one thing, one thing we can do to show love.
Yes.
Let's do it.
And thoughts and prayers aren't enough. But raising our voices, raising our fire,
Mm-hmm.
that's enough. And to all who have lost a child, in whatever way. My heart goes out to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I just felt like a moment of silence was necessary in that that brief moment. Okay. Thank you everyone for watching, for participating. Um, if you like or if you want, please share in the comments on what's one thing you can do today or tomorrow that could help start making a difference, so that hopefully more people don't need to suffer. And we'll see you on our regular time next Monday at I think it's what, I don't
11,
remember the time.
11:15
9 a.m.
Central.
Yeah. There we go. I'm like, oh shoot. Sorry, guys. The tough topics today, and I just also, I know you wanted to close out on that. If you have a couple of seconds here,
Sure.
sometimes I just want to point to this too. When we get in these high stress situations or talking about these high conflict or dysregulating conversations, it's normal to forget stuff. Um, and I speak to that as a person with chronic pain, so I feel like it's increased a little bit. But so be gentle as we're working through this process of mourning, of grieving, of wanting to do differently. I think we just also need to be gentle with ourselves. It's okay that I forgot the time. You guys will find us. We'll see you Monday. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Angela.
Thanks, everyone. And I'm Kat.